Hello, you're watching AnewZ Morning from Baku. I'm Bakhtiar Sonovan. Here are the top stories. G20 leaders adopt Rio de Janeiro declaration. Leaders call for action on climate change and wars in Ukraine and Middle East. United States is pledging to provide even more assistance to Ukraine after President Biden authorized the use of long-range missiles against targets inside Russia. Bill to rewrite indigenous rights brings tens of thousands of protesters to New Zealand's parliament. At the G20 summit in Rio, leaders signed a declaration tackling key global issues such as trade, climate change, and security. The document, also calling for peace, urged reforms to enhance the United Nations' role in global governance.
The G20 leaders' declaration emphasised commitments to addressing trade tensions, climate change and international security. It also highlights the impact of the ongoing conflicts in Ukraine and the Middle East on global stability. The leaders' statement urgently called for increased aid and protection for civilians alongside a comprehensive ceasefire in both Gaza and Lebanon. A key part of the declaration urged reforms to the UN Security Council to strengthen the General Assembly's role in preserving international peace, aiming to enhance global governance. The signing of the declaration underscores the G20's united effort to address urgent global challenges and reinforce multilateral cooperation.
The United States is set to announce additional security aid for Ukraine. It follows America's approval for Kiev to use missiles inside Russia. At the United Nations Security Council, the United States ambassador to the United Nations condemned Russia's deployment of North Korean troops. But Russia says the West's involvement is only escalating the conflict.
Ukraine is reaching a significant milestone of 1,000 days of war, and Kyiv says international support remains crucial to its survival. The United States is preparing new measures to strengthen Ukraine's defence and reaffirm its commitment to the embattled nation. US Ambassador to the United Nations, Linda Thomas-Greenfield, says the support is not just a political issue but a global priority.
The United States will continue to surge security assistance to Ukraine, including artillery, air defense, armored vehicles, and other needed capabilities and munitions. And we will announce additional security assistance for Ukraine in the days to come.
She also condemned Russia's recent decision to deploy North Korean troops alongside Russian forces.
In its desperation, the Kremlin has turned to the DPRK, first for arms and now for manpower. At least 10,000 soldiers, sent first to eastern Russia and now to the far western Kursk oblasts bordering Ukraine, have begun engaging in combat operations with Russian forces. It is a move without modern precedent.
British Foreign Secretary David Lammy warned that Russian President Vladimir Putin's success in Ukraine could signal the collapse of international law and border security worldwide.
If he succeeds in Ukraine, he will tip the world beyond the tipping point that we are on, a point where the principles of the UN Charter, self-determination, territorial integrity, and international law are lost, and there's no meaning. So this is a grim milestone, and I'm here at the United Nations to say to member states, unless Putin fails, the wars of conquest will be back.
Meanwhile, Russia's UN representative dismissed the West's role in prolonging the conflict, accusing the UK of pushing Ukraine toward continued confrontation with Russia and deepening regional instability.
In other words, 50 days after the start of the special military operation, when the losses in the Ukrainian armed forces were not yet that significant, the hostilities had every chance of ending. This would have been the case if it hadn't been for the interference of the British Prime Minister, who convinced Zelensky that he should continue fighting, that he would have Western support and weaponry, and he would thus be able to inflict a strategic defeat on Russia.
With US President Joe Biden authorizing the use of its missiles in Russia and President-elect Donald Trump's return to the White House in January, the future of US support for Ukraine remains uncertain. All eyes are now on how global assistance will impact the next phase of the war.
After a 9-day march, thousands of Maori and their supporters rallied outside New Zealand's parliament. They are against changes in an historic bill that they fear could weaken indigenous rights protected under the Treaty of Waitangi.
Thousands of Maori and their supporters rallied at New Zealand's parliament. They fear changes to the 184-year-old Treaty of Waitangi could threaten their cultural and social rights. In 1840, the treaty was signed between the British Crown and over 500 Maori chiefs. Today, it continues to influence legislation.
I came here to support the Maori people, and because my family are also Maori, so I want to do this for them because their land matters to them. And it's not just the people, but their future generations. So I want to be here to support them. Yeah.
But I know that this bill is going to be ruin everything, and probably still separate us into two instead of into one. And I believe that we're fighting for the right reasons.
Maori make up 20% of New Zealand's population of 5.3 million and face significant social and economic disparities. Thousands say they'll continue to demonstrate against what they perceive as a direct threat to the historic agreement governing the relationship between Maori and the Crown.
In France, farmers have staged a protest against the trade agreement between the European Union and the Latin American countries known as the EU-Mercosur deal. The protesters say large imports from Latin American countries may push out European producers and reduce standards within the EU.
Leaving their farms to voice their concerns on the highway. These farmers fear a possible double standard in an agreement allowing for imports that are not subject to strict EU regulations to compete against European produce.
We are here today to denounce the EU-Mercosur treaty. Emmanuel Macron left for Argentina and Brazil to ensure France's voice is heard with regard to this treaty. We do not want to import agriculture from these countries, since it is not produced according to the same standards as we have in France. We are capable of producing poultry, we are capable of producing beef. We do not need to import all these things from these countries, especially when they are not in fact produced with the same level of quality as here.
Police escorted the convoy of tractors, which was parked along the highway, as farmers camped in to spend the night. The agreement between the EU and Latin America includes Brazil, Argentina, Bolivia, Paraguay, and Uruguay. And it could allow up to 99,000 tons of beef and up to 1 million tons of maize, among others, to be imported into Europe. Last week, the EU Commission says it wants to protect European farmers in the deal.
We are precisely in a phase where we are addressing a number of concerns that have been raised by the European farmers community in particular, in order to ensure that these concerns are dealt with appropriately in the final agreement with Mercosur.
Brazil has been pushing to have the EU-Mercosur agreement signed by the end of the month, while it holds the presidency of the G20. Advocates for the deal, including the EU's biggest economy, Germany, say it will open up more markets for their own exports.
Plastic waste is creating a major problem for the Ruzizi hydroelectric dam between Rwanda and the Democratic Republic of Congo. Rubbish is 14 meters thick and causes frequent power cuts.
Situated in the southern end of Lake Kivu, the AnewZ Dam's output has been heavily impacted as it's become a collection point for thousands of pieces of plastic bottles, cans, and other plastic items. Lack of electricity has had a negative impact on local businesses. It's a situation that authorities have attributed to poor waste management and not a lack of power generation capacity.
Here we have 4 machines, and together these 4 machines produce a total of 29.8 megawatts. These waste materials affect all 4 machines at once.
Clogged at a depth of 14 meters, divers must regularly remove plastic waste from the bottom of the dam to prevent turbine blockage and clean the surface daily. This highlights the environmental and economic challenges in the region. As a result of the persistent pollution and waste crisis plaguing the region, authorities are desperate to address the root cause of the problem by introducing sustainable waste management systems.
Requiring each household in Bukavu to join a waste collection organization will ultimately allow us to assess the extent of this issue. Once each household collects its waste, these collection organizations can pick up the waste from households and transport it to disposable sites.
Authorities have urged residents to take responsibility and not leave rubbish on the streets, as it eventually ends up in the AnewZ Dam.
New Delhi is facing its worst air pollution crisis of the year, as toxic smoke continues to blanket the city. The government has stepped in with emergency measures to deal with the crisis.
New Delhi is the worst city in India for mortality rates linked to smog. Around 12,000 people die each year from air pollution. That's according to the Lancet Planetary Health Journal in July. The capital has an air quality index of 1,081. Experts warn that without long-term solutions, the city's health and future will remain at risk. Now, Indian authorities have banned diesel trucks in New Delhi and closed schools. It's part of triggering the activation of Stage 4 of their graded response action plan. It means construction work has stopped and many businesses are having to work remotely to reduce emissions. Only vehicles carrying essential goods are allowed to enter the city. Residents are urged to stay indoors as much as possible to minimise exposure to the hazardous smog. Visibility in the capital has dropped to just 100 metres, with flights and trains operating, but with delays.
The second week of COP29 in Baku shifts focus to human development with an emphasis on youth, health and education in the face of climate change. Here is more on the day's discussions and outcomes. The second week of COP29 in Baku began with a focus on human development, children and youth, health and education, addressing critical issues for humanity when confronted by climate change. Today's youth are not only inheriting these challenges, but also preparing to lead the fight. The inaugural Human Development Day featured a high-level meeting on the Baku Initiative on Human Development for Climate Resilience, emphasizing education's role in building climate resilience. The meeting introduced a joint statement and the Baku Guiding Principles, highlighting the importance of climate-friendly curricula, teacher training on environmental matters, and equipping youth with green skills. Ms. Maya Seppo, Assistant Director General, International Labour Organization, stressed the need to study and gain expertise in green skills to prepare a climate-ready future workforce.
As ILO, we put a strong emphasis on skills, so making sure that we have a skilled workforce which is going to be critical to enable the transition, and also making sure that young people get the green skills that are in the demand in the labour market today and in the future.
Education is the obvious tool to empower young people. Think about science. Science gives you the tools to understand the issues around the climate, to engage with this, to become the future engineer who's developing the technologies to adapt to a changing climate and mitigate the climate.
We have created an educated workforce that corporates, the private sector need to implement what we are trying to do, so to tackle climate change. So it's a real revolution, a revolution starting from literacy, climate literacy for the new climate revolution.
The day's discussions reinforce the significance of Human Development Day at COP29, showing how education and human development are increasingly essential in achieving global climate goals and securing a sustainable future. AnewZ, as the official media partner, brings you live coverage from COP29 in Baku, Azerbaijan. Joining us on the ground with the latest updates are Guy Sean and Orkan Amashov. Good morning, Guy and Orkan. What's the latest from the summit?
Good morning, Batir, from the floor of the media hall here at COP29 in Baku. And today, attention shifts to a slightly different theme, the theme of food, agriculture and water. There are a number of meetings taking place, a number of high-level meetings taking place, all designed to empower farmers to become more climate resilient. There are also a number of meetings all focused on tackling methane emissions. Methane, of course, is the second biggest contributor to climate change, making up an estimated 16% of all greenhouse gases. So all kind of slight shift in focus today.
Yeah, as was the case yesterday, we have two components going hand in hand. One is particular subject, and that particular subject today is food, agriculture and water. An official launch opening of that is happening currently as we're talking. Apart from farmers, of course, the enabling them to face this climate challenge, and also making sure that they benefit from climate finance package. These issues will be discussed today, and also water-inspired climate solutions with a particular emphasis on the integration of water-inspired solutions into NDCs and national adaptation plans will be discussed today. You mentioned about the reduction of methane from organic waste. We expect to hear the announcement of initiative from COP29 presidency in partnership with Food and Agricultural Organization of the United Nations today. And of course, there will be some attention ascribed to tourism as well. If memory serves me correctly, tomorrow is Tourism Day in principle, but of course we know that there's a very interesting relationship between tourism and climate change, because tourism sector is very prone to climate change, and also tourism contributes to the 8% of the global carbon emissions. So some of the issues related to that very intricate subject will be discussed today as well. Apart from this specific subject, we have the high-level segment being resumed today. Back last week on week 1, on day 2 and 3, World Leaders Climate Action Dialogue was taking place. Those heads of government and state who did not deliver their national statements, representatives from those countries will be delivering their national statements today. So environment ministers are here. We saw some of them, of course, on our way to the blue zone. So effectively, two elements, specific water agriculture component and also high-level segment. These things should be understood in the right context.
Thank you, Orkan. So a lot going on here today at COP29. The high-level ministers are here, but also a focus on farmers and agriculture. Please do stay with us, and we'll keep you updated here from COP29.
Thank you very much for the latest updates. This was AnewZ Guy Sean and Orkan Amashov. And one more inspiring story from the UN Climate Summit. Journalist and cyclist from Germany, Ingvar Perovanovic, has completed an extraordinary 5,000-kilometer journey to COP29 in Baku. Powered entirely by pedal and purpose, he carried the voices of climate change frontliners to the world's largest climate summit.
The world is not changed by those who stay at the table. It is changed by those who ride through the storm. That's according to the freelance journalist Ingvar Perovanovic, who believes that the world is a place where anything is possible, as long as you're pedaling far enough. His journey to COP29 in Baku started in the heart of Europe, in his home country, Germany.
started in the southwest of Germany, in my hometown Freiburg, and my first challenge was to climb the Alps, you know, the big mountain range. So this was my first challenge, and then northern Italy was a fascinating place. It's called South Tyrol. That's a beautiful place, I realized first. And then a challenge was the Balkan, you know, in Bosnia or Montenegro you have lots of mountains, but you get rewarded with magnificent views and also lovely people. And I would say a thumb rule, the hospitality of people increases the more you are away from Germany.
His journey stretched through 14 countries, 5,100 kilometers, and took 110 days, all with one purpose: to bring a message from the people affected by climate change to the doorstep of the world's most important climate conference in Baku, Azerbaijan.
My two main political objectives with this journey was first to raise awareness about the climate conference and about climate-related issues. You know, climate change is a huge threat to our humanity and to our civilization. And I wanted to raise awareness about this. But also, I'm a huge fan of cycling, of course, and I think the bicycle is a really underestimated technology in fighting climate change and also in tackling pollution and all the environmental related problems we have in our cities, for example. When you start such a trip, your body is not used to cycling all day long, and you don't have so much good endurance. So it was one of the biggest challenges already at the beginning of the trip.
As a journalist, he says he's capturing the views of the people he meets and the landscapes he passes. This gives him a deeper motivation to witness the stories of the world as they are unfold around him.
I write articles, for example, I wrote about my travel on a bi-weekly basis for a German newspaper, so I get some income from that. I have some savings, of course, and I travel economically, I would say. First of all, it was the first time that I showed myself, you know, with my face and on video, and I wasn't sure how people would react to that because they don't know me actually, and I was completely overwhelmed with the reaction. I got so much emotional support. People wished me all the best and supported me all the way.
His connection to his bike and the open road symbolizes freedom and the personal commitment to sustainability. Ingvar was confronted with the suffocating reality of urban congestion, something that he hadn't faced since he first set out from Germany.
I always struggle with traffic, you know, especially when there's heavy traffic, truck traffic. I had some dangerous car incidents when trucks or big cars just pass you, you know, and you could feel the air from them passing by. And sometimes cars don't see you, you know, they take a right turn and oversee you, and you can't do anything about it.
Baku city may buzz with the political power of COP29, but Ingvar's presence in that room represented something different. For Ingvar, it was about bringing the world closer together in the fight for a better future. He hopes that the ride is just the beginning of something much larger, something that will ripple out across the world.
Fragments of two Greek terracotta figurines have been unearthed during archaeological excavations around the Antakya, ancient hippodrome in Turkey's Hatay province. This sheds light on the intellectual heritage of the early Hellenistic period.
It has been determined that one of the fragments, which includes a head and part of a torso, depicts a sophist, an ancient philosopher. It dates back to the early Hellenistic period between 300 and 200 BC. The other figurine fragment, a head, has been identified as belonging to the late 2nd century BC. This may have even been part of a household item or a child's toy, according to the researchers. The excavation, part of the Heritage for the Future project, spearheaded by Turkey's Ministry of Culture and Tourism, focuses on the palace area within the Hippodrome site in Antakya''s Küçüktalyan neighbourhood. The figurine fragments have been transferred to the Hatay Archaeological Museum for preservation and further study. This discovery not only enriches the narrative of Antakya''s ancient urban fabric, but also provides new insights into the intellectual and cultural practices of the Hellenistic period in Turkey.
Well, that's all we have for this hour. Please do stay with us. You can also get latest news and headlines around the clock on our website, that is AnewZ.tv. Thank you for watching.